Thank you for tuning in. My name is Leslie Sefcik. My colleague John Yorke and I had envisioned that this talk was to be a roundtable discussion, but in light of the virtual format of the conference, please direct questions and comments to the email addresses provided at the end or in the question forum indicated by the conference organizers. Some of the information in this presentation was presented as preliminary data at the 2019 Higher Education Quality Network Conference in Melbourne, Australia. Beginning in 2016, murmurs began to surface of contract cheating websites extorting money from students that used their services. To explore this empirically, my colleagues and I began a study to examine student knowledge and perspectives on contract cheating and blackmail. I'll touch on some of the results of this study today, and the full paper can be found in Studies in Higher Education at the address on the screen. Given what we now have empirical evidence that blackmail related to contract cheating is occurring, the focus of the talk today is how should educational institutions respond? To ensure that we're on the same page, I'm going to quickly go over what I mean by contract cheating and blackmail. In this context, we are talking about contract cheating using outsourcing websites or organizations with monetary exchange, rather than from friends or family. In relation to blackmail and extortion, which I will use interchangeably, I'm referring to a situation where the contract cheating website threatens the student with exposure to the university if money is not paid above and beyond that which was agreed upon in the initial outsourcing contract. In our study, we provided students with a scenario about potentially outsourcing a difficult assessment and asked them which of 4 options they would choose. The options ranged in price and had a variety of different risks and possible benefits associated with them. The first scenario did not introduce the possibility of extortion, whereas the second scenario, which included the row highlighted here in gray, introduced that possibility. Students were also asked about their experiences and perceptions of contract cheating and blackmail in real life. Our results showed that about 2.4% of students in the study selected to outsource their assessment, which is a little lower than the 6% found in the much larger Brtag et al. 2018 study. We also found that this group were all domestic students and spoke English at home. After students were introduced to the possibility of being blackmailed by the contract cheating service, 1/2 of the group that originally chose to outsource reconsidered their decision and chose to do the assessment themselves. Now, this provides us with a glimmer of hope by showing us that if students are educated about the possibility of extortion, it may deter them from using contract cheating services in the first place. Next, we asked students if they knew of anyone that had been blackmailed by a contract cheating service. 2% of students surveyed had direct or indirect knowledge of a student being blackmailed. Another 6% had heard about it through the media or another source. We asked the students what happened in the blackmail situation, and they shared a range of stories that were grouped into 7 different categories. Category 1 was that the contract cheating service increased the price prior to delivery of the contracted work. Secondly, they imposed additional fees after the delivery of the work. Third, contract cheating services initiated threats after students graduated. Fourth, threats were initiated in response to students complaining after an assessment had failed. Fifth, contract cheating services threatened students in response to not being paid appropriately. Number 6, contract cheating services threatened public disclosure for students unless they paid more. And 7, contract cheating services requested series of micropayments to keep quiet about the contract cheating. Here are a couple of quotes that we received from students to give you an example of what kinds of information that they're giving us. The company required an additional fee from a friend to keep quiet regarding the cheating. Once they graduated, the site threatened to expose them and make sure their graduation certificate gets taken away from them. Basically, they asked for consistent micropayments from students. The next question we were interested in was, how would students respond to this type of situation? One of the most interesting findings is that 68% of students believed it would be worse to be caught by their institution than be blackmailed. This indicates that universities need to communicate with students and develop a comprehensive plan to manage these types of cases in such a way that encourages students to disclose the situation rather than choosing to navigate the path of extortion. Students gave a range of ways that they thought that they would manage this type of situation, such as going to the university for help, doing nothing, potentially paying, or potentially contacting police or a lawyer. Possible student responses to the threat generally fell into 5 categories. The first category was to disclose to the institution, even if there had not been a demand made and despite the risk to their academic progress. The second option was to contact a police or a lawyer rather than the institution and try and manage it in that way. Third was to attempt to renegotiate a deal with the contract cheating service. Fourth was to ignore the request in the hope that they wouldn't follow through with the threat. And fifth would be to pay the request, which may lead to further requests for payment in the future. Given what we now know about the student situation in relation to contract cheating and blackmail, I'd like to examine the possible institutional responses. The institutional response involves 2 parts. One is pastoral support, which includes things like counseling and advice from the university or the student guild. And I won't go into more detail about this aspect because I believe it's quite straightforward. The second aspect examines the academic penalty and reassessment of the learning outcomes in a contract cheating and blackmail situation, and this is much more complicated. I'll examine 4 possibilities in turn. The first option is for the institution to provide amnesty for students that disclose the situation. The positive impact is that it may encourage students to come forward. However, this results in equity problems if those students are then given an opportunity to retake the assessment. The second option is for the institution to maintain the standard penalty, irrespective of whether the student voluntarily disclosed or not. This ensures consistency in dealing with misconduct, which is good. However, it is unlikely to encourage students to come forward unless they're experiencing considerable stress from the blackmail. The third option is to vary the standard misconduct penalty when the student comes forward voluntarily. If, for example, the standard penalty is annulment with annotation on the transcript that misconduct occurred, then a possible alternative is a fail grade with no annotation of misconduct on the transcript. This option favors proactive action on the part of the student and does not introduce equity issues for other students that did the right thing. The fourth option is to have the student repeat the assessment or the unit. This option is potentially problematic as it advantages the cheating student if the assessment is similar to the original assessment. In addition, if the student fails the unit for misconduct and is required to repeat it, this creates a dangerous cost-benefit situation in which the student may favor paying a blackmailer potentially less money than it would cost for the tuition to repeat the unit. In reviewing the four options that have been discussed, our recommendation would be for institutions to vary the standard misconduct penalty for students that voluntarily come forward. This creates a proactive disclosure situation for the cheating student and does not introduce equity issues for other students that did the assessment themselves. In conclusion, our study has shown that contract cheating services are now resorting to extortion, and that students are very much unaware of this possibility. This understanding gives universities the opportunity to educate students and potentially prevent students from accessing these services. It is also important for universities to develop comprehensive plans for helping students in this situation, as currently students indicate that they fear the university more than they fear the possibility of extortion. If you're interested in being part of future work in this area or would like to continue this discussion, please feel free to email me, Leslie Sefcik, at curtin.edu.au, and my colleague, John Yorke, at j.yorke@curtin.edu.au. Here are some of the resources that we used for this talk, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you for your time.